Next thing, have you contacted your payers? Hopefully you have reached out to your payers. If you haven't reached out to your payers, don't panic. We have verified that majority of payers, we've been calling, clearinghouses have been communicating with payers. So far, we really know that they're going to be accepting ICD-10. We do know that there are a few states that the Medicaid payers are not yet ready to process claims with ICD-10. However, they still require that the claim be sent with an ICD-10. So as a provider in a practice, you're going to send your claim with the ICD-10 code. They're going to recode it back to an ICD-9 to be able to process that claim. Keep a close eye on those. And check with your Medicaid plan and again with your payers to see if that's the case. Also check and see if they're going to have a dual coding submission period where you can submit both 9s and 10s. Many software are allowing you to do dual coding. So if you do have payers that accept 9s, you submit those claims with 9s, and if they're 10, you submit with 10. One of the concerns was about workers' comp and personal injury. Are we going to switch to ICD-10 for them? We've reached out to a number of the large workers' comp carriers, AIG, Sedgwick, Corvell. They've told us that yes, they are going to require ICD-10 as well as of October 1st. There's a number of them that said you can do either or, 9 or 10. Travelers, Liberty, Hartford. So check with those payers to make sure. And make yourself a quick reference tool for setting that up. So if you're using a software like NueMD, we have a spot where you can click in there in the payer setup if they're accepting 9s or 10s. But if you don't have that, make a spreadsheet of your payers so you can mark that if they're accepting a 9 or a 10. On that spreadsheet, I would also recommend having that available to your front office staff. As your front office staff is contacting payers, maybe to check eligibility or your prior auth to get prior authorization, they can ask at that time, do we submit our claims with ICD-9 or ICD-10? And update the spreadsheet right then for you, if you don't already have that information. Another thing everyone wants to make sure that you have are the new claim forms. So it's the 2014 CMS 1500 that is set up for ICD-10. The previous claim forms are only to be used with ICD-9. So make sure that you have those on hand. Another thing is if you use a paper super bill, make sure your super bills have been updated with ICD-10 codes so that it makes it easy for the staff and for the billers. Use a conversion tool using manuals. I recommend that all practices do purchase a hard copy of the ICD-10 manual. It's easier to look at. You can gather around, you can get together as a group and research codes. You can look at sets of codes and really all get together, maybe schedule some meetings, staff meetings, go over your top diagnosis codes and then get the code book out and look at those. There's lots of free resources. So get the ICD-10 book. Of course, we do have to pay for that. Websites, ICD-10data.com, that has a nice mapping tool that's free. NueMD has on our website a training lab, and that's specialty specific as well. And then the Coder app for your phone, which makes it nice and easy to look things up. So talking about specialty specific, make sure that you're aware of the differences between the ICD-9 and the ICD-10 for the diagnosis codes that you frequently use. Generate a report out of your software. See what the top diagnoses that you use in your practice are. Maybe pull 25 to 50 of those. Get your either the Coder app or something online, the ICD-10data.com, and go ahead and look up the mapping and create a cheat sheet if you want for everyone so they know, okay, this is what it was with the 9. These are the options for 10 for that applicable 9. It'll make things easier for you if you can focus on the ones that you typically see in your practice. Also make sure that your staff is familiar with the ICD-10 format, the way that it varies from ICD-9. ICD-10s are 3 to 7 alphanumeric characters. The first digit is always a letter. Digit 2 is always a number. And then the 3rd through the 7th digit can be letters or numbers. One thing that we have also in ICD-10 are place holders. And you'll notice that as you start referencing and using your mapping, though the placeholder is an X. So as you get further down in the code, those last few characters, that's where it really starts to define specificity and location and laterality. If you need a placeholder in one of those, you would see that with an X. That 7th character, you'll see a lot A, D, and S. So A is the initial encounter. You're going to see that at the end to say that this is the initial encounter that I'm seeing the patient for this diagnosis. There's a D, 7th character, that tells the payer that this is a subsequent encounter that you're seeing the patient. And then there's also an S for sequelae. So if that what you're seeing that patient for is a result of something else. For OBGYN, for obstetrics, we'll see that 7th character will let the payer know what trimester. So it's important to keep in mind with the ICD-10 codes, they're going to change. So with ICD-9, a lot of times someone would come in and they would have their ICD-9 codes. Then when they would come in for a follow-up, they would just copy those same codes and use them again for the next claim. You cannot necessarily do that with ICD-10 because the first time it's going to be flagged as an initial encounter. If you try to bill with that same diagnosis code, again with the A 7th character, your claim's going to be denied because you've already billed for that initial encounter. So make sure that you're watching that. Diagnosis will have to be coded at each visit now, just like a procedure is coded at each visit. There's no more carrying over of the diagnosis.